In following couple of minutes, I will build 3 sample pivot tables and then I will show you how to update the data. So let's move to the travel agency sheet here, and what we have here is the order list. That means every line is one customer order and there is a trip ID. I actually use VLOOKUP function to find the trip name based on that ID. So there is a VLOOKUP function, very important function, and price to find the price of that. So I have like a complete, let's say, data that are perfect for a pivot table. So let's build a report that will show me what is our revenue per each trip, and per each trip. That will be fine. So we assume that everybody paid the full price. So I stand in that, I go to insert, pivot table, and click here, and I would put the trip ID, or sorry, trip name would be a little bit better maybe, to the rows, and then price to values. Automatically the pivot table will show me the sum of price. I will format this into euros. Okay. Another interesting information would be now the number of customers per each trip. So I would put the customer into values, and this time, because the customer is not a number, it's a name, so it will offer me to count the customer for me. Unfortunately, the formatting got wrong, so I need to select that and remove this euro, because this is an actually number of customers. So I will choose a number here with 0 decimal points. So this is the number of customers we have per each trip. So this is the second example, or still was the first example. Let's go to the second example now, and we have daily sales here. It's a retail store with in 4 countries, and we have like a daily sales for each days from 2013 until 2019. We have 2000 rows, so it's a little bit larger, but it's not a problem for pivot table. So let's go insert pivot table, click enter, and this time I will be interested maybe in the sales in France. So I will start with the value. I will put France in values. So this is the sum of sales in France. Again, I will format it to euro. Pivot table, as you can see, is not very good in understanding the format, because you see, even though the data is formatted with euro, the pivot table that cannot read this formatting, so you need to format it manually here. And now I would like to split it by date, and you will see that it automatically got split by dates. If I open it, I have quarters, and if I open it again, I have months. That's quite practical. So theoretically, even if that would not be aggregated, even though I would have like a individual transactions, not like a daily summaries, but individual transactions, I will very easily be able to have like a monthly, quarterly, and yearly sales numbers. Maybe if you would like to adjust that, or maybe if you have an older version of Microsoft Excel, you don't see that aggregated by years, quarters, or months. How you actually turn on and off this aggregation or grouping is if you right click anywhere into these numbers, and I will click ungroup, and this is how you maybe see this table if you follow the steps that I just do, because not all versions of Excel can do it automatically, but all versions of Excel can do it after the right click. So if you have it in that state, you can right click, click group, and then you can select months and also years. I click months and years, and you have a nice sales table of months and years. Here in the rows columns, you have the date and you have a years as a special new field. So you can drag this field into columns, and you will see that now it's neatly formatted by month in rows and years in column labels. That's great, isn't it? Okay, so now let's go back to employees. We have an employee list, and we would like to know how many employees there are in each office. So let's again go to Insert, Pivot Table, and click Name as values. That would be a count, because you cannot sum the names, and office here in rows. That's quite easy, but I wanted to build this table to show you how it works with updating the table. So if you go to employees, and let's say I will relocate some of the employees to a different office. Let's say Ann Goldman will be relocated to Frankfurt, our new office. So let's go back, and there is no change with the pivot table. The reason for that is that pivot table doesn't act as a typical Excel formula. It acts more like a web page. So even though changes were made in the underlying data, you need to refresh the pivot table. The easiest way how to do it is to right click and refresh, and voila, we have a Frankfurt and one person in Frankfurt. So also if you go to Analyze tab of the pivot table, there is a refresh, and if you open it, there is a refresh all, which is practical if you have multiple pivot tables and you update your data. So refresh all refreshes all the pivot tables. If you go to employees, another typical situation might be if you go down and let's put a new employee. Jones, Adam, male, 30, and let's build one more office in Japan, let's say Osaka, finance, manager, and salary. We can keep that empty, actually, this is not a problem, and the starting date would be today. Okay, let's go back to our pivot table, click refresh, and nothing happened. Why not? Because if you remember, when we were creating the pivot table, I will do it again. It will only select these cells until 102. So pivot table does not automatically understand that it should include any additional rows below. We need to teach it. So if I just do some additions like time to time, I can just be in the table, go to pivot table analyze, and choose change data source. And then this will give me step back to where when I started the pivot table, and if I go down, I see this Adam Jones is under that line. So I can just let's say click in, click Ctrl A to select everything, and click OK. Problem solved. But you don't want to do it every time you update your data. So there is a clever way how to do it, how to work with data. You can use the Excel data table. It has a lot of interesting functions. So I will make a copy of this table and show you how to use it. So if you have a table like that gets updated or appended, it's good to use the Excel special format for data. I will make a copy of this table by just holding Ctrl and dragging to the side. I hope you remember this trick. And now if I stand in this table, I go Home, Format as a table, and I can choose any of the coloring, that doesn't really matter. And then create a new pivot table out of this table. It has a special function. It's not just a typical Excel worksheet. It has some data properties. It's more like a database style table. So if I go to Insert and Pivot Table, you will see that this time it will tell me it's not like a range. It's just tell me table 1 will be my source data. I can even rename the table. If I go to table design, I can put the table name to employees. So it's neat and tidy. Then I go to insert, pivot table, and I have the new sheet, and I will recreate the same table. I will go to office into rows and name to values. And again, I will show you how to create new employees in that case. So if I go down and create more data, let's say I would put new employee, let's say Blair Anna, female, 30, and let's build one more office, let's say Melbourne. I'm not sure how to spell it, that might be right. Sales, director, and starting today, salary will be filled later. So if I go back to this table, to the pivot table that's built on this blue database table, and now I right click and refresh, you see the Melbourne office appeared because this table automatically adds any new rows, which is very practical if you need to keep some database or make a new data. So anytime your data gets updated, if you work with some exports, let's say, you can download the new people and just like paste it below and then just click refresh. Or if you would like to have a complete refresh, what you can do is just like a delete the data completely. Keep like the header so the table will not be deleted, and later on export the data, let's say from your HR system, and paste it here, and the pivot table will work with that updated data. So these were a few examples of pivot table data and very important information how to update those.